Hey everyone and welcome back. If you have ever built a form in Angular, you know how important it is to make sure the user enters valid data. But how do you actually do it? So in this video, we are going to solve one of the most common problems for any Angular developer, which is how to add a simple yet effective validation to a reactive form. To keep things focused, we are going to start with a brand new minimal Angular project. So we'll create a new project in our terminal. So I've opened my terminal already here, and on my desktop, I'll create a new Angular project. We'll use the ngnew command, as you can see, this one. So we'll call our project reactive validation demo, and it will be a standalone project, and we will use styling as SCSS. So once we press enter, it will install all the packages we need. So server-side rendering will do no for now. Okay, now we can take this project and open it into our VS Code. Now we will open our VS Code, and inside this we'll drag and drop this folder which is reactive validation demo. And that's it. With this, our application is now open inside the terminal. We'll expand it and we will go to our terminal, and here we will run the command ngserve just to see that our application is running perfectly. Okay, so now we can go to our localhost and let's see if our application is running. Perfect. So now we are done with the basic setup. Now we can go in our component and start implementing the form. Okay, so we are going to do all of our work in the main app component. So inside the SRC, inside the app here, the app component will do the whole work, because as it's a small tutorial, there's no point of creating more folders and then making it complicated, right? So first thing we need to do is, as we will be doing reactive forms, so we need to import our reactive forms module. So if we go here, we will say reactive forms module. So you see it comes from Angular forms. So we need this in order to use it, okay? And then we need other stuff such as our common module and our router outlet. Perfect. So now let's build our form. So we'll create a simple contact form with fields for a name, email, and a message, okay? So first thing which we need to do is we need to inject our Angular's FormBuilder service, okay? So you'll see I'll go here, and after this I will say private FormBuilder. So I'll say FB, and I need to inject. That's it, because I'm using a FormBuilder functionality, so I need to inject that. So I'll say FormBuilder. You see it comes from Angular form. Now we have access to this FormBuilder methods and stuff, okay? Now after this, I'll define my form. So what is this form? This is a contact form, right? So I'll say contact form, and this would be of type FormGroup. This will be always like this, okay? The pattern which you are writing. Now what do we need? So we need a place where we can call our form, right? So for that, I will implement here on init. Perfect. Now inside this, we can initialize our form. So we'll say this dot contact form, and we will give it the value of this. So we'll say this dot FormBuilder dot group, okay? So because we'll be grouping a lot of properties such as our name, our email, and message. So that is why we are using FormBuilder dot group, okay? So inside this, we will open our brackets, and now we'll define the properties which we need. So we need our name, then we need our email, and then we need a message property. So if user wants to give a message, because it's a contact form. So we'll have all these properties, okay? So let's start defining them. So first would be our name, like this, and we always define it using this square brackets. So first thing we do is we give the value what we want to give it, right? So the name would be empty in the beginning. If you want, we can give it some name as well, like I can give my name if I want, but I want to keep the field empty whenever it loads, okay? And then I will say that this field has to be required. So I'll say validators dot required. So with this property now, if this field is not filled up, then it would give an error. So that is how we are using this reactive forms property, which is validators dot required, okay? So similarly, now we'll have our other fields as well. So email, again square brackets, we give the value which you want, which is empty. Then we write our validation. So in the square brackets, we can write as much validations as we want. So one is the base validator, which is again validators dot required, because we want our email to be there, right? We don't want user to submit the form without email. Another word we'll say is validators dot email. So this will make sure that the email is in a valid format, right? So users don't write just any email. So with this, that will be make sure. And after this, we will have our message property. So we'll have message. Again, this would be same stuff. We'll initialize with empty value. And inside this, we will give our property. So we'll give our validators dot required, again same, and we will have our other property which is validators dot min length, because we want our message to be of at least some length. So I'll give it a 10. So you can have like mean length, and you can have max length and whatnot. But one thing I forgot to tell you, so whenever you use multiple validators like validators dot required, validators dot email, then you need to take this and also put them in a square bracket. So like this. Perfect. So same you need to do here as well, to put this inside the square brackets. Perfect. And if you're using a single validator, then it's fine. You do not need to put them in a separate square bracket. Only when you're using multiple, you need to put them all together in a square bracket. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Now after this we can close our method here, and after this we can define our onSubmit. So whenever user clicks on the form and he wants to submit, he will call this method, which is onSubmit. Okay, and what this would do, this would take the data and submit it. That's it. So we'll say here a condition, we'll say if the form is valid, then only allow user to submit. So we'll say this dot contact form dot valid, then only will allow him to submit. So we can do here like a alert. Okay, and we'll say successfully. Okay, and we can also see how our form looks. So for that we will log, and after this, whenever user has submitted the form, what we can do, it also allows us to reset our form. So we'll say this dot contact form dot reset. So you see, with calling this method, our form will be reset every time a user submits, so that he can submit the next thing he wants. Perfect. So that is it for our component file. Now we will go into our HTML and define the structure of our UI. Okay, so we'll remove all of this stuff first. And now what we need to do is we need to connect our this HTML, right, the template which we'll create, to our this form, the form builder which we created. So we need to somehow connect this contact form to our HTML. Okay, so for this we will be using our form group. Okay, through this we'll be able to connect both of them, and for each property, so we'll have multiple properties, right, like our email, our name, and our message. So all of these individual properties we will connect using something called form control name. So this will link each of these properties to basically this. So name, email, and message will connect using form control name. Okay, so let's get started. So first I'll have a basic div, and inside this I will define my form. Easy as that. Now I'll open this form like this. I'll remove the action and I will reinitialize this bit. Okay, so what I'll do is first I need to define my form group. As I mentioned, this will be connecting to our form, right? So I'll say form group here, this property, and what do we want it to connect it with our form? So this contact form. So we'll just put it here. Perfect. So now our whole form is connected to this contact form. Okay, now we can put also the method which I mentioned, the ngSubmit method here. So this ngSubmit method will be called every time users submit the form. So for this, if you remember, we created this onSubmit method and we'll call this method. Perfect. Now inside this we can go and actually define our form, the fields we need. So first we'll have our name field. So inside this here we'll have a label for it, and we'll give it the heading name here. Perfect. Now we can define our input field, where actually user will go and write the name. So this should be of type text, which is fine. We'll just need to give it an ID here for styling and stuff. So I'll give it ID name, and now we will use our form control name. This is the property which will basically connect our TS to our HTML. So you can see this one, right? So this name now will connect to our template. So for that we need this form control name. Okay, and we need to initialize it with this value. So we need to make it equals to this value. So I'll say here form control name equals to name, and you see the errors are gone. Perfect. So similarly now we will have for our email field, and we will have for our message field as well. Okay, but this is the property you need to focus on, which is form control name. We have assigned it to message. So you see message, email, name, we have assigned using form control name. Okay, so these are the three properties we have. For example, in the future, if we have one more property called phone number, so we'll have another div and we'll write form control name equals to phone number. Easy as that. And the whole form we have connected using the form group property, and we've given it the value of contact form, which is our this contact form. Okay, so now after this, what do we need? We need a button to submit the form, right? So that this can basically get called, which is ngSubmit. It won't get called automatically. We need to submit it. So for that, we will write here button. And this button, basically, we need to give it a type. What kind of button is it? So what do we want to do? We want to submit the form, right? So we'll select the submit, and we'll give our button a name, and we'll call it submit. Perfect. So it's because of this type submit we are giving, this will trigger basically this behavior. And in our TS, our onSubmit will get called. Okay, and if it was a real application, then we would call our backend and send the data. So here what we'll do, we'll show alert, making sure that the form is valid, and we'll see our data, how it looks like, and at the end we are resetting it. Perfect. And that is all. So now if I save the application, we can see that we have got a form, but you see our form looks really ugly. So I'll just give it some predefined styling I have got and make it look better, and then we can see how the logic works. So first thing which we'll do is we'll go in our HTML and we will give classes to all of this div, okay, and also to our button as well. So I already got those, you can see. And for button also we have given a class called submitBTN, because now we'll go in our SCSS and just get those styling as well. Okay, so here I've already got some predefined styling written. As you can see, we have got a class container, contact form, h2, form field, label, input text area, submit button disabled, and for our error message. So these two properties we'll be implementing now. Perfect. So now let's close this file, and inside the HTML, now we have our validation logic in place. We have written the HTML, we have also written our TS. Perfect. Now if we go back to our application, you can see that it looks really beautiful. Now if I go here and if I submit the form, okay, so if I write a message here, it should be, everything is fine. Okay, now if I submit and if I open my log here, you will see that the form submits successfully. Perfect. And we can also see our form group. You can see the controls and we have got all the properties which we need. Perfect. But if I go here and this time I write something, for example, my name, and then I write something called basically this, and I do not write a proper email, right? And for message also I give like less than 10. Okay, the length is only 4. Now if I try to submit it, you will see the alert didn't came. Why? Because we didn't submit our form properly. So you see our form logic is working properly, but only thing we need to do is we need to tell the user, right, that you need to write a proper email or you need to give at least some minimum length. So now we will work on that. We will show user a clear error message. So this is the most important part of a good form design. Okay. So we'll go into our HTML. So now we will update our HTML to conditionally display these error messages. Okay. So the key here is to check two things. First, if the form is invalid or not. That's the most important. Okay. And has the user actually interacted with it or not? For example, when user lands on the form and the fields are empty, that time we do not want to show any error, right? Because user never interacted, so he never touched it. So that time we do not want to show him error. We only want to show him, for example, if user has interacted with the form and then he has done some mistakes, then only we want to show him. Okay. So let's go in our HTML and write these conditions. Perfect. So let's start with our name field. So we'll give here a div and we will give a message, which will be basically name is required. Okay. So this condition, when do we want to show this condition? We want to only show it when user has either touched the form and then the form is invalid on top of that. So I'll say here ngIf. Okay. Now inside this, we will get our form. So we'll say contact form dot get. What property do we want to check on this one? Name, right? So we'll get our name property here. So we'll say contact form dot get. And that is how we get our name property. So inside the string, we write name. And what do we want to check? We want to see if it's valid or not. So we'll say if this is invalid. So here we'll have invalid. Okay. So if this is true, then we show this one, that name is required, but we don't want to show them directly. So that is why we use the AND condition with this. And we will say this should be invalid. And on top of that, if user has touched this form, then only we show this error. Okay. So we again get the name and we use the form property, which is our touched, this one. Perfect. So we say if the user has touched our form and if it's invalid, okay, basically the name property, then we show this condition, which is name is required. Okay. So they can go and write their name. And for this, we'll give it a class for styling and we'll call it error message. Okay, so now similarly, we will do for our email and for our message as well. So after this, we will just copy this bit. Okay, so it will just make our work easier. I'll paste it here. This time what I want to do, I want to get the email, right? So I'll say contact form dot get email dot invalid. Okay, and contact form dot get, and if the user has touched this email field, then only we want to show the error. And inside the error field, if you remember, we had an array of errors, right? This one. So when we want to access that, I'll show you how we do that. So if you think here in the HTML, I'll have a span. Okay. And here I'll put a ngIf. So I'll say ngIf and I'll write the condition. So I'll say contact form dot get. First, we want to get the email field. Okay. So we'll say here email. And after this, what I want to do, I want to see if basically there are any errors on this field. So basically these validations, right? I want to see if there are any errors on this. So you will see it provides me with a property called errors. So this one. So if there are errors, okay, and there we will check our required property. Perfect. So here I'll put this required property. So we'll say this is required. Okay. If user goes and find this error, then we will say email is required. So here we'll say email is required. Perfect. So now you can see we are getting some errors here. Now we can just solve these errors easily. So it's because after this we'll have dot. So we'll say errors dot required, and you can see the errors are gone. Perfect. So you see, again, I'll show you what we did. So we contacted our form. So we say contact form dot get the email field and get all the errors there are. And basically, specifically, we are looking for the required one. And similarly, now we will do for our email format as well. So I'll copy this, and this time I want to get the email field. Remember, we defined this email field as well. This one, okay? So first we took required, then we're taking email. Perfect. So we'll say, basically, if this is the one, then we want to say that enter a valid email, okay? Because user has wrote something, but it's not valid. So we'll say, please enter a valid email address. Perfect. So with this one is also solved. Now we will go and do for our message. So for message also it will be same. We'll just replace our email with our min length. Perfect. So here after this text area, we'll have this div, and you can see we are contacting our message dot invalid, and we are seeing if it's touched or not. This is pretty much same. Then we've got span where we are taking the required and showing the message. Next time we are getting our message min length property, and we are showing this at least 10 characters long message should be there. Perfect. So actually we are done with all of our validations. Now we need to put one more thing. We shouldn't allow user to submit the form if the form is invalid. So I'll use this disable property, and I'll say if contact form dot invalid, if this is true, then make sure the button is disabled and you just shouldn't be allowed to submit it. Perfect. So now if I save it and if we go to our form here, so you see currently the button is already disabled and it's grayed out because user haven't even touched the form. As soon as I touch the form, okay, and if I write my name, and here what I'll do, I'll write a fake email. So I'll just write DAD something, and then you see we have a beautiful error message here saying please enter a valid email address, and this one as well says a message is required. As soon as I start writing a message, you see the error is gone. So it all happens in real time. Same with this one. Now if I write the correct email format, you will see the error is gone as well. Perfect. And same with this one. As soon as I removed it, you can see the name is required error comes up, and the buttons get disabled every time there is error. So if I fill up this field correctly, you see our submit buttons is enabled. So when I click on this, you will see we got our alert box and we get our form data here as well. Perfect. Inside the controls, we can see all of our fields. So we can see our email, our message, and our name. Okay. And it has a lot of properties which you can also try and test. So in this tutorial, we learned how to use the validator service and how to conditionally display specific error messages based on the fields. Okay. And of course, we learned how to make our submit button as disabled until unless the form is valid. So this is a pattern which you will use over and over again. Trust me on that. Okay, so this form is a basic example. But if you want to see how to integrate these forms into a huge real world application where we use NgRx for state management, a real database, and a user authentication, I highly recommend you check out my complete Jira Clone tutorial. It's a master tutorial where I teach everything you need in order to make a full stack Angular application. I have linked the video in the description below. So if you found this video helpful, please hit like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video.